Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, The Jamie Jo Show! Alright, in this video we are going to be reviewing a very important episode of The Walking Dead. It is Season 10C, Episode 20, and it's called Splinter, and it's... it really hit home with me. It really dives into mental health in the apocalypse and how people cope with mental health. And I was recently, last year in 2020, diagnosed bipolar, and I've had anxiety and depression for years. And this episode was just really important to me. Oh my gosh, I've watched it a couple times already, and the first time I saw it, just wow. Yeah, I don't know, it made me, I don't want to say happy, it didn't make me happy, but it made me very glad that they showed this aspect of the apocalypse. And, you know, we don't always get to see people's inner demons and what's going on inside. So on that note, let's start. So it's Eugene actually opens, he narrates the flashback and the previously montage. So you're thinking, okay, it's going to be, Eugene's going to have a big part in this, he's going to have a lot to do with it, we're going to find out what's happening with the group. And it opens with the group that's, you know, our group is being held up by these stormtroopers. I'm going to go ahead and call them stormtroopers because that's what they look like and that's what everybody on the internet is calling them. I know that's not what they are. They're from Commonwealth, from the graphic novel, from the comics, but we'll just call them stormtroopers for now. And Princess goes to grab one of the guns from one of the soldiers, and bad idea, they said, and she gets thrown to the ground, and Yumiko turns her and tries to, and it's all blurry, so it's kind of, you know, you're kind of thinking it's a flashback, and they knock Yumiko out cold on the ground, clocked her with the gun. And so Princess is like freaking out, no, and they say, she hears them say separate them all, and they go and they put her in a train car, in an empty train car, and it's a point of view from the ceiling of the train car looking down, and she's in the corner looking up, and she's all by herself, and boom, opening music, opening credits. Okay, so we come back from, you know, the intro, and Princess is looking around the train car, and she's checking on the door and seeing if it'll open, and then it shows her flashback to when Yumiko gets knocked out, and it's real quick, but it's like, oh, you can tell that she's kind of feeling guilty about it, and she starts pacing the train car and counting in Spanish. So you're like, okay, is she trying to calm herself down? Is she pacing out the train car? Kind of what's happening? And then she notices there's some bags on the floor, and she gets really stressed out because she thinks that it's Yumiko in those bags. And she starts naming off alphabetically, and I think it's capitals. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm pretty sure it was... My puppy's down here if you're hearing little noises. Oh. And so anyway, so she starts reciting all of the cities alphabetically, and that is also, you know, so you're like, okay, so that's helping her calm down too in this moment that she's super stressed out. So she goes to grab these bags or whatever they are on the ground, or cloths, whatever, and no Yumiko. Yumiko is not there. And she then all of a sudden she sees a hole in the wall on the side of the train car, and she runs over to it, and she starts trying to break it off, and because it's like a little slit like this, and she tries to make it bigger, and she's ripping it apart, and she gets a splinter, and she's like, ah, and she gets this literal splinter in her finger, right? And then all of a sudden she hears Yumiko, and you've got to see, I'm going to show you my puppy. Oh, come back. No, maybe not. This is my puppy Sophie. Short for Sophia. She's gotten so much bigger. She wanted to be in the video. Hi, Sophie. Yes, you did. Yes, you want to be in this video and talk about mental health. Yay, puppies and mental health. All right, you got it. Puppies are good for mental health. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Okay. All right, so Just have to do that. Anyway, oh yeah, so she starts talking, Yumiko starts talking to her, and she's like, hey, what are you doing? And we don't see her face, which I thought was kind of unusual. It's like, okay, she can't see her, so that's why. But why would Yumiko, like, I mean, I get that she's hurt, but she could get up and so that Princess could at least see her face and make sure she's okay, and you never see her, so that was a little odd to me. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And Princess starts talking about how she's gonna try and get Yumiko help, and then Yumiko's like, no, it's a bad idea, and Princess is like, why? You need help. And Princess is, yeah, but it's dark in here. And that's really, okay, so we've seen all of this evidence of anxiety and her trying to calm herself down, and then that's when it really kind of hits home, and she's like, ooh, maybe she has some post-traumatic stress syndrome as well, because she's like, it's dark in here, and it's like, oh, you feel really bad for her. And then she starts telling this story of when she's 14 years old, and she had another splinter from doing the same thing. She was trying to rip off the wood door frame, probably because she was locked in a small space somewhere dark, and she did not have a good childhood, is what we're learning in this episode, and it's really sad. And her mom, she's basically being abused and neglected, and the mom doesn't care, and the mom has a husband, and the stepdad is just mean to Princess, and he laughs at her over the splinter. He won't let her, because she gets infected, and he won't let her eat at the table. And then when she's talking about this popular girl that when she goes to school and her finger's all infected, but this popular girl helps her dye her hair, and how that changed her life. And then she hopes that the popular girl, she's like, oh, wonders if she's still around. And that's really sad too, because she has this moment of like, oh man, why did I bring up her? Why did I think of her? And it makes her sad all over again, thinking about, is she alive or not in the apocalypse? And so then oh yeah, and he laughed, evil laugh at her. So back to the not letting her eat at the table, and then she tries to beg her mom, like, why, don't make me eat in the garage alone. And the mom actually says, then don't eat. And that was so horrible. Like, you're her mom. I have kids, and they are going to eat before me. Like, you want to make sure that your kids have food and are taken care of and well taken care of and not neglected and not abused. And obviously her mom failed to do that, which is really, really sad. And then she says, I don't know where it was going with that story when I started. So that kind of, to me, also is a little glimmer of the mental health aspect, because she's telling the story and wants Yumiko to know this story, but why? It's a piece of her trauma, childhood. I don't know where I'm going with that story. But anyway, and then all of a sudden the stormtroopers come in and they take Yumiko, and she starts yelling, Princess starts yelling, like, why? Don't know where you're taking her. She's hurt. Make sure you take care of her. You're going to give her help. You're going to give her help. And then another flashback, because she's feeling guilty. She's feeling guilty, a lot of guilt here, and she starts naming the cities again, and then it pans out, it's a long shot of her standing there by herself in the train car, and then it's the next morning. So she spots this board, she's sitting there like looking around again, and in the corner, off in the other corner, on the other side, she sees this rectangular looking board on the wall, and she's like, no way. And she goes over to it and she starts trying to pry it off the wall, and it's just barely nailed on there, which also I'm thinking, this is not a very secure little boxcar that these stormtroopers have her in. Did they not know this? I mean, they had to have known this ahead of time, especially because they've showered her and interrogated her in this place. I mean, they usually, obviously they utilize this place before. It's not the first time. So, really? They're gonna have holes in these boxcars? So, anyway, she gets it off of the wall, and she climbs through, and she goes to the other boxcar that's next door to hers, and Eugene is in there, but we only see Eugene. We don't actually see his whole, like, his face. There's a screen in front of him, and she's talking to him through that, and he's trying to tell her, get back in there, you're gonna get us in trouble, this is not good, and you need to get back in there. And she's like, no, I'm gonna get you out of here because we need to go help Yumiko. And he's going, no, I've talked to Stephanie, I believe it is, and for weeks now, and this is how it has to go, and this is the process, and just, you know, trust it and everything, and get back in there and don't get us in trouble. And so then all of a sudden she hears something, and it's two little stormtroopers walking by, and she goes around the side, she's like hanging on and hiding from them. And they're talking on the radio and the walkies, and they're like, oh, all clear, and they keep walking. So she goes back around to Eugene, and he's like, before you get us in any trouble, you need to hurry up and get back in there. And she's like, fine. So she goes back into her train car and puts the board back up, and it's right after she gets back in there that her train car door opens up, and one of the stormtroopers comes in, and he tells her, hands up, you're coming with me. And she's like, okay, where are we going? But he obviously won't tell her anything. Next shot is of her with her arms up, and she's naked, completely naked, showing, the camera's showing her back, and she's been showered, she's all wet, her hair's wet, and they have her slowly turn around, and she's like, what do you want from me? If you're looking for bites, I don't have any. And the next thing, and she does bring up her splinter. She's like, but hey, I've got the splinter on my finger, if you could take it out for me, that'd be great. Which they don't, because the next scene is her sitting there playing with her splinter in her finger, and her foot is going, like, bouncing 100 miles an hour. And I have to say, I do that. It's a very nervous tick. It's an anxious tick. When I get very anxious, my leg tends to do that, so I could relate 1,000 times with her on that. Being in a stressful situation and being so tense that you just have to, like, you have this, like, nervous energy, fidgeting, you have to get out. And anyway, so the interrogation does not go very well. She doesn't tell him anything but her name, Princess, which he thinks is a joke, and that she's from Pittsburgh when the fall happened. And then the interrogation starts to escalate because she won't tell him anything else, and she wants to know where Yumiko is and if she's being taken care of, and he is like, she is fine, you know, you need to give us answers. And no, she is like, she starts screaming, and she won't give him any information, and they're standing up, and he backhands her, like hits her hard across the jaw, I think it's the side, and next thing you know, she is knocked out, she's on the ground, and she is back in her train car again. Okay. So she wakes up, she's rubbing her jaw, she's back in the train car, and she goes to check on Yumiko, and she starts talking to her and telling her all about the interrogation, how she doesn't think it went very well, yada yada. And then you don't hear Yumiko, like Yumiko is not there. And then all of a sudden she hears something over on the other side, which is Eugene's side. So she goes over there, she's hearing like the stormtroopers or whatever, and she crawls back through the little escape hole, and she goes over to his side, and he's gone. Here come more stormtroopers, like checking. She goes back, climbs over on the side, and she's hanging there, and she hears them all clear, and they go, and then she goes back, and she books it back over to her train car, and she's like freaking out because Eugene is gone. So she has another flashback to that night when they were split up from each other. And then all of a sudden she hears something on the roof, and she's like looking, and the thing opens up, and she goes, what the? Ezekiel. And Ezekiel pops up, and he jumps down like a superhero. I mean, literally like a superhero. I'm like, oh, okay, Ezekiel, you're like dying of cancer, but you're jumping down into a train car like it's nothing. That was a little odd. And he tries to talk her into leaving, and then he tells her everything will be fine, and she desperately says, no, everything's not fine, cries nothing is fine. Cries nothing is fine. And that was really, really sad, because she tells him how Dickhead hit her over the face, or over an old fracture, and she's like, don't worry, it's healed every other time before. Oh my gosh, so you know that she's been beaten before, probably most likely by her stepdad. And then they're talking again about trying, you know, going back and forth between whether or not to save Eugene and Yumiko, or if they should just get out of there. And Ezekiel goes, they're my friends, and it was really mean of him. And she's like, yeah, oh, I know they're your friends. And he apologized for it, and, you know, whatever. And then a stormtrooper comes in, and they're sitting, well, they're sitting there talking. They sit down and they're talking, and they're talking about life and family and everything. And then that's when the stormtrooper comes in, and Ezekiel just disappears. And you're like, what the heck? And she's talking to him. She's like, look, I'm sorry about earlier, talking about the interrogation. She's like, da, 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 da. And she's talking all fast, and boom! All of a sudden Ezekiel comes in and just clocks the dude, right? Knocks him out cold. And she's like, whoa, that's not how what I had in mind. Blah, blah, blah. And he goes and rips the guy's helmet off, and she's like, let me do all the talking. Let me do the talking. And he tries to tell her that they're a really good community, and that, you know, he gives him the spiel, or he gives her the spiel, why she should trust him and everything. But then he tries hitting her, and it gets her off guard for like a second, but then Ezekiel comes, like, attacks him, and she's like, boom, 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 going crazy, going to town on this guy. And he yells, no one is going to hurt me anymore, when Ezekiel had told her, oh, no one's going to hurt you anymore, when she had told him that she had gotten hit. And then all of a sudden, it's her hitting him. She's got bloody hands, and she was the one that was hitting him. And then all of a sudden, she's looking around the room, and she notices there's no hole in the wall. There's no fake little, there's no little escape hole there. That it was all in her head. It was all fake. And she takes off running. And then she runs down, she runs, and Ezekiel's there with two walkers that are dressed up like she would have dressed them up, with, like, as a train conductor and an engineer. And Ezekiel's telling her, like, hey, let's go, let's take off running, that's what you like to do. And she's like, no, I got friends back there, and they came back for me. And she decides, no, she's gonna go back. So she goes back, and the stormtrooper's, like, awake, and she's like, no, and she uncuffs him, and he's like, oh, she goes back to train. She says she doesn't know her own strength. That's what she says. And he asks who she's talking to now, meaning she's been, like, talking to herself or talking to people. Obviously she was talking to Ezekiel the whole time, and she's like, no one, I'm talking to you. And then she brings up, she's like, maybe it's she brings up ADHD, PTSD, anxiety, crushing depression, and she says an overactive imagination that helps her cope with it all. Oh man, when she said that, I was just heartbroken for her. I felt like I can relate, because I was diagnosed bipolar, and I can relate to it on so many levels. So I already said that at the beginning of the video, but that moment right there, I don't know. I'm speechless. Let's just put it that way. So she uncuffs him, and she asks if she can see her friends and if she gives him more info, and he's like, yeah, I can work with that. So she tells him her name, everything, where she is from, that she tells him the group's name, but she doesn't know anything about them because she just met them a week ago, where they were going, how they walked, how they rode bikes, and how they got there. And he's like, great, cool, that's awesome. And he's like acting all trustworthy and everything, and like, yeah, this is going so smooth. And she goes, can I see my friends right now? And he goes, yeah, they're right here. And then he bangs on the door, and he's like, we got her. And she's like, wait, what? And they open up the doors, and there is Eugene and Yumiko and Ezekiel, and they all have black bags over their heads, and they're standing there with the stormtroopers, and she's like, wait, what? And they put a bag over her head, and then end credits, and it ended like that. It ended like that. I could not believe it. I couldn't believe it. But I was really disappointed in the way that it ended, but I really, really want to reiterate that I loved the mental health aspect of this episode. They needed that, and I think they really needed to show that, and I'm so glad they did. Thank you to The Walking Dead and AMC for bringing that character to life, and thank you for Paola Laozo, who is amazing as Princess, and she just did a phenomenal job, and props to her. Kudos for portraying all that post-traumatic stress and everything. And I loved it. It was amazing. If you like this video, please hit the like button, and thank you for sticking around and watching all of this. And if you like my other reviews and my other videos, hit that subscribe button. Until next video, bye!